I think I've come to the conclusion while writing this episode that I have no idea what this show is supposed to be. And that's okay. Welcome back to the first 30 minutes. This is a show where I play a game for 30 minutes and share my thoughts about it. I'll be honest with you, this one's a little different than usual. You ever have that one game you've played multiple times as a child, but for whatever reason you can't remember a goddamn thing that happens in it? Of course you do. There's so many games out there that companies just push out into store shelves, it's kind of hard to keep track of them all. Take, for example, 3D platformers in the 90s. The late 1990s were an interesting time in video games. Companies like Nintendo, Sega, and Sony took games to the third dimension, bringing in new innovative ideas to your favorite genres. One of those genres was platformers. What if you took Mario and put the camera behind him instead of at the side? However, with every new innovation comes the inevitable copycats. It's fair to say there wasn't a short supply of platformers to play during this time period. Some turned out to be great that stood the test of time, some have more or less been forgotten. That brings us to our subject today, Croc Legend of the Gobbos. This was a video game. Not much I can say about it. I have a lot of fond memories playing Croc, but honestly, I can remember starting it and really that's about it. So what the hell is Croc? Croc was made by these guys, Argonaut Games. They helped make this little-known franchise. Argonaut Games is an interesting story. Initially making games for systems like the Amiga and Commodore 64, Argonaut's first real break came after beating Nintendo's copy protection on the original Game Boy. Their first project would be developing a 3D prototype for the handheld based on their first game, Star Glider. They would then be able to create games on the platform without permission from the Japanese developer. Usually Nintendo's response to these things ends with a cease and desist. However, strangely enough, Nintendo would be so impressed with their tools that they'd hire them to work on the Super Nintendo. Their work would eventually lead to the creation of the Super FX chip, allowing the Super Nintendo to render 3D polygons, a feat initially thought impossible. The result would lead to the creation of one of Nintendo's most popular franchises, Star Fox. Now let's fast forward a few years and get back to Croc, which coincidentally also involves Nintendo. The team at Argonaut had desired to continue working on a 3D polygonal game, specifically a 3D platformer. Their original plans were to create a game based on Yoshi from the Mario series. However, Nintendo would reject the project. Argonaut would then retool their game and make it their own. The ending result would be Croc Legend of the Gobbos, published by Fox Interactive for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and PC. This is probably not important in the grand scheme of things, but I'm playing the PlayStation version. I have the other 3 versions as well, but this is the one I played first. But now that we're playing with the same set of rules, let's rock. At the beginning of the game, we're greeted with a little cutscene introducing us to the world and its characters. Croc is an orphan who's raised by the Gobbos. This fucking manual is brimming with lore, dude. Who were the Gobbos? Examine ancient paintings from the time of their civilization and you will find that the Gobbos were a short, furry people who could be politely described as gerbilesque. But what of their soul, their character? One historian wrote that the Gobbos were among the most advanced civilizations of their day, making great strides in science, literature, and peoples whose intelligence shine like a beacon in the night. It should be noted that this historian himself was a Gobbo, and not only made numerous grammatical errors in his account, but also misspelled Gobbo. No, the Gobbos were a simple people, a race whose greatest inventions were edible deodorant? In over 2,000 years of existence, the Gobbos have only sent 3 of their kind to college, and 2 of those are returned postage due. Ah, the first level. Nice and simple with grass and oh yeah, tank controls. The cruel joke on old 3D platformers. A feature I quickly circumvented by swapping to the analog function. It didn't solve the problem, it's more a notch above, but it's still uncomfortable. Not every platformer during this time period could be like Mario or Banjo. Some decided to follow the Bubsy principle, which is to say, it's playable, just not ideal. The levels in Croc play fine. The levels are treated more like obstacle courses than the wide areas of Mario 64, which suits its control scheme well. However, there are times when the controls can get in the way, especially alongside the camera. Now bear with me here. I'm about to sing Bubsy some praise. The one novel thing that Bubsy does better than Croc is its camera. In Bubsy 3D, the camera will pan down while jumping so the floor is more visible to the player. This allows for more accuracy while platforming. However, Croc doesn't do this, as when Croc jumps, the camera will pull back behind the character, making it difficult to judge the distance between platforms. This often makes for some frustrating moments. In all fairness, the game feels like it was designed around the tank controls. On most levels, I rarely felt like I wasn't able to surpass the obstacles put in front. Oh shit, there's swimming in the game. And it's great. The levels themselves are rather basic, however their tightly compact designs creates for better looking visuals and character models. It's very rare to find PS1 games where the textures aren't swimming around. The goal in each level is pretty simple. Collect all the Gobbos, collect colored gems to unlock new areas, find the keys to access trap Gobbos or new areas, hit the gong, and do it all over again in the next level. At least in the time I played, this was all I did, aside from the 2 bosses I faced. Sometimes it feels like they couldn't decide whether or not to go for a more obstacle course based design like Crash Bandicoot or a more collect-a-thon style design like a Banjo-Kazooie, so they decided to go with both. I feel that Croc could have benefited from more puzzle-focused levels. It's hard to say if that's the direction they go into later on. This is just my take based on the allotted time. I find that tank controls work rather well on these kinds of levels, but it would also help in separating Croc from other platformers. However, due to the show's rules, this is as far as I go. There are boss fights, however, as you can imagine, the boss fights are everything you'd expect them to be, seeing how it's pretty early in the game. In the first fight, I just waited for the enemy to strike, and I attacked him 3 times until the game decided I was done. Like there wasn't even a death animation, the level just ended. The second fight was pretty much the same, but with a few extra steps. At this point in the game, I had pretty much run through my 30 minutes, but I still wanted to see what was around the next corner, so I went to the next world, which turned out to be a frozen tundra. The actual world feels like more of a palette swap compared to the first one. They more or less changed the green and brown scenery to white and blue. They also swapped the lava for frozen water. However, the few levels I played still operate the same, but with a slippery twist. In summary, I don't really think Croc moves the needle much for platformers as a genre, although I did find the game charming with its visuals and its music. I have a sneaking suspicion why people don't talk about Croc these days. The game itself shows promise with its first few levels, however, in the time I played, Croc never really seemed to have any hidden cards up its sleeve. Maybe I am being a little too hard on it, especially since it is early in the game. However, I feel like when you boot up a game like Mario or Banjo, you're immediately presented with interesting locations and seemingly endless possibilities that Croc doesn't seem to provide. Thank you guys so much for watching the second episode of the first 30 minutes. As you can tell, this one was a little different compared to the first one. I'm still kind of experimenting with this show, trying to figure out what I like and what I don't like, so please feel free to leave a comment down in the comments below. Let me know if you like this new format or if you preferred the old one. Also, if you like the content that we're giving you, please feel free to subscribe to keep up to date with any future releases. You can also follow the channel's Twitter page, my Twitter page, and Joe's Twitter page for any updates on future releases. Thanks for watching, guys.